And welcome to the Midday Show. I'm Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. And joining us today, Joe Smith of North Central Cinema. We are here to talk about 2022, the summer that saved movie theaters. Joe would agree with that. He has some numbers for us. He's got some hardcore proof that is indeed what happened. Before we get to Joe, every guest has to sit and wait. The most important question of every day, Mark, how are you feeling today?
Well, honestly, you didn't expect. I've had like water in my ear for like 3 weeks, and it's not going away. I think Joe is considering right now, like, should I have showed up today? The pregame has been a little bit of
all bets are off right now.
Yes, he's wondering like maybe I should have picked a different day. Yeah, but no, I'm good. We're ready. Let's go.
2022, the summer that saved movie theaters. Joe, I'm going to pass it right off to you, and I'm going to say, what about this made it the summer that saved movies?
Well, you had a perfect combination. People were ready to go back to the movies. Actually, they were kind of ready to go back last summer, and things picked up a little bit. This is now our third summer since the pandemic. The first one, 2020, was pretty much a non-starter. I mean, just everything that was supposed to come out that summer got canceled. Last summer was okay, but it was fits and starts. And this summer you had Maverick. You had a couple of superhero movies, Doctor Strange and Thor. And you had, what was the other? Oh, Jurassic Park. Yes. So these are what they call tentpole movies. Everybody wants to go and see them. And so it was like a perfect storm. And without getting too technical, at the halfway point of this year, June 30th, movie theaters had already made almost as much as they made during the entirety of 2021. So we're looking at maybe, and if you want some hard numbers, we're looking at maybe $7 or $8 billion this year, as opposed to about 4.5 last year. So that's a lot of money. We're talking a lot of money.
Were you surprised? Was there a level of you that was like, is it ever going to go back? Are people ever going to go back to the theater?
To tell you the truth, now that you asked that, for a while I was very worried. I was worried that. I mean, movie theaters have been struggling for years, maybe even decades now, to keep up with streaming. And before streaming, we even had just cable channels like HBO. And theaters were struggling. And I thought, several of us thought this might be the death knell. Like that's going to be it. But they came roaring back. Hitchcock said years ago, they asked him, hey, is TV going to kill the movies? This was in the 50s. He said, people always want to leave the house. Especially young people. They want to go someplace else where their parents are not. They kill the movies. And he said this 70 years ago. And then you had movies that people really wanted to see, like Maverick and a number of others. Maverick, by the way, is now at $700 million. Globally, has probably crossed $1 billion. And that's $700 million is domestic. And it's still showing in many places.
It is interesting, just the simple of going out to eat or going to the movies, that people want to leave the house. And, and there's that other level of the movies like Maverick that people will tell you just have to see it on the big screen. I don't know if that plays that way with Elvis, but I'm really glad I saw Elvis on the big screen. Yeah. So there was a time though, we all, like, you're much more of a movie expert than we're just kind of fans. You kind of get it, but we were wondering too, is this the end?
Yeah. Here's this was just something, because I went down, I made my short list here. But one of the things that I actually noticed, and I wanted to ask you about this, we had mentioned the Spider-Man kind of leading into the summer. Yep. The Way Home. Yep. Which I absolutely loved. However, like when I started going through my list that I saw, and then even like some of the summer movie lists on my phone, if you would have said to me movies were going to dive back in, like they were going to be saved, I would have thought Disney's going to come up with something massive, and I would have told you the Marvel movies were going to hit hard. And the Marvel movies, I don't know. I'm sure financially they did well, but they weren't well received. Thor kind of flopped a little bit. I know Doctor Strange rubbed some of the Marvel people the wrong way. And then Disney kind of, I don't want to say they no-showed, but they didn't have like a huge summer blockbuster. And those were the two. I would have said Marvel and Disney must have saved movie theaters. And really, like, you had Tom Cruise with Top Gun, you had Nope, I'm trying to think, you had Elvis. It kind of came from places that I wouldn't have expected it to come from.
Yeah. Yeah, and Disney did have a blockbuster this summer, but it turned out to be not a blockbuster. That was Lightyear.
Oh,
This
yeah.
was their tentpole movie, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's everyone loves the Toy Story movies. There's not a person on the planet that dislikes those films. And even though Lightyear did okay,
Mhm.
about $120 million, that's not much. I mean, there are movies that made that much money on their opening weekend.
Yeah.
So 120 million is kind of a drop in the bucket for a Pixar film
Yeah.
that's riding on this huge wave of popularity. So it did kind of flop. And I think what's happening with the Marvel is we've reached a point of exhaustion now.
Yeah.
No one
Well-
wants to see 3 or 4 superhero movies a year. 1 or 2 would be okay. But we had the Batman, and you had Spider-Man,
Yeah.
and Thor, and Doctor Strange, and I think I'm forgetting one. And we're only halfway through the year. Well,
Yeah.
2/3 of the way, and that's just too much. People
Well, I
aren't.
think too. There's a I never heard of Doctor Strange. Now I'm not a comic book reader, but you keep Stallone's in one. I just
Right.
saw the previews for it,
Mhm.
and it is called "Where's Brett When I Need Him," and so you're also pulling up these comic books. Like everyone's heard of Spider-Man and Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and all these, and now you're pulling up these deeper ones that you have to be a comic book fan to have heard.
There's a little obscureness to the ones they're doing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think too, it kind of the Marvel movies seem to me now like hair metal music in like 88, 89. That like there are still bands coming out and they're doing this, but it's time for a change. And here came grunge, and I think it happened with all genres. I saw it kind of you saw it with rap, and then rap had to change a little bit. We've seen it with country that you just can't. It can't sound the same as it did 10 years ago and work.
Right.
It'll come back around 30 years from now.
Well, they are
But
trying
right
to
now-
swap. They are trying to swap out the formula. Like I have it on good authority that the new Thor movie has a very different texture to it than some of the other ones. I didn't see it. I'm suffering from superhero exhaustion myself.
Yeah.
But that
Well, you
they're
live the life of a superhero. Like you don't need to go see it.
yes, I just forgot my cape today is all.
Before we start going through some of this list, let's just bounce back to Lightyear. I
Okay.
feel like I'm the only person on the planet who actually didn't think it was bad. I know expectations were unbelievably high, and then when the reviews came out, people kind of really downplayed it, and that might have changed my viewing experience
Right.
because
You
I
were
wasn't expecting
you're
a ton.
expecting less. Yeah.
But I actually enjoyed it. I actually thought some of the humor in it was very well done. I thought it was pleasant to look at. I know that's not necessarily like the number one reason to go to a movie, but it does matter if it's enjoyable to see on the screen. I did not hate Lightyear. So there, for what it's worth.
I said good, not great. I would have given
Yeah.
it 3 out of 4 stars.
Yeah, I didn't hate it
just
the way
just a
critics
little
did.
bit not quite as good as you expect from Pixar, who
Yes.
they're constantly making these masterpieces, and that one wasn't a masterpiece. So
Yeah.
it's the expectation thing.
Yeah.
If any other studio had made it, you'd be like, yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go. Let's bounce back and forth. What do you have on your list?
Um,
What do you want to talk about?
you guys are going to be surprised. I still think my favorite movie this summer so far was Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, which I've now seen twice.
Mark's seen it 3 times.
At
4.
least. At least you're gonna have to actually tell me what
Yeah,
it's about.
enlighten
and
us.
Don't say Mrs. Harris because I get that.
Yeah, it's about an older woman. It takes place in the 50s.
Okay.
She's a British cleaning lady. She's been scrubbing floors on her knees all her life. And she learns that her husband has died. He's been missing in action since World War II. And she suddenly decides she has to have a Christian Dior dress. She sees one, falls in love with it. It's the only thing she wants in her life. She spends a whole year scrimping and saving and flies off to Paris to get one. The thing is, she doesn't really belong in the world of high-class Paris fashion. So when she charges in there with her frumpy shoes and her frumpy dress and her frumpy hat and her crappy makeup, but her totally no-nonsense manner, she's like, look, I'm going to buy a frock. Where are they? It's just hilarious. And she turns the whole Paris world of fashion completely upside down, changes all their lives and changes hers almost by accident. And I'm just, I think part of it is I have a soft spot in my heart for movies about older women. Because now when you get to be 49 or 50, or especially if you pass 60 and you're a female star who actually starts to look old, that's it. But we're slowly turning the corner on that and making actually interesting movies. You know, Harrison Ford is 79 and Indy 5 is coming out next summer.
Is it really?
Yes, it is.
Because Indy 4 was so good. And that
Well, it's his first one not directed by Spielberg. We'll see if it's any good or not. But I like movies about older women. that says, hey, they still have a place in society. Let's not write them off just because they don't look like Jennifer Aniston anymore. So I was very fond of that film.
Maybe back to Indiana Jones. Maybe they're going with like the Beethoven theory that the odd ones were good because the first one was good. Temple of Doom sucked. Last Crusade was good. Then the Crystal ones sucked. So weren't the Star Treks weren't the original?
It was
Star
it was
Treks?
the other way around.
The
in Star
even
Trek.
ones were the Wrath of Khan and the Voyage Home, and so maybe that's it. Maybe
That might
they
be
just
it.
know every other one's a stinker. We need to get to 5.
Was that a Disney? Who made Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris?
It was a Focus film, and
Okay.
Focus tends to make somewhat unusual pictures that not everybody sees.
Do you think, as we see it in music all the time, that kind of each decade has its genre, and you can only do. As we get out of the Marvel, do you think there's a chance they're going to go back to just storytelling again?
I don't
Not
think
that the Marvels aren't storytelling, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't think we ever really left it. There's plenty of movies out there that tell stories. It's just that they tend to not to make a lot of money. So people go flocking off to the tentpole movies, which are all spectacle. But their movies are out there, and I just have to float out a couple of other quick ones. I just saw 13 Lives, and that was astoundingly excellent.
Really?
And that tells a story, man. It's a true story. It's about the rescue of those boys in the cave in Thailand. They were trapped in behind a flood. And B.J. Novak's Vengeance has a really good storyline too.
Okay. He was just on Bill Maher the other night talking about the movie.
What's that?
He was just on Bill
was
Maher's
he?
show the other night
Wow,
talking
okay.
about Vengeance.
Interesting. I wish I'd seen that.
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube.
Okay.
13 Lives, Ron Howard, correct? Which you kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit. Like, I don't know if Ron Howard has ever done wrong.
Yeah. Well, I was saying, I just finished writing my review of that. And Howard, it's like he masters these technological challenges, like Apollo 13 had to be made mostly in zero gravity, which is, how many movies do you know of that were made in zero gravity? And the zero gravity in that film was real. We're not talking about special effects. And then he made Backdraft, which is probably the best firefighting movie ever made, at least from a technical standpoint. And what was the other one that he made that was so technical? I'm always blanking on it. But he really has shown that he can do just. Rush. He made a movie. He made a movie about car racing.
Yeah.
Which nobody saw, but it was still a really, really well done film.
I loved Rush.
So he just seems to be able to master anything that's a technical challenge, like this film, 13 Lives, mostly in the dark, underwater. That's very challenging to do, and also to tell a story while you're doing that.
The irony is, like, a lot of problem solving, right, in that technicality. But it's a lot of his movies, he's incredibly good at showing people solve problems.
Yeah, right.
So there's a little bit of the irony of what it takes for him to make a movie versus the story he's telling usually has somebody facing a challenge that seems almost impossible.
You're right.
Just incredible.
You're absolutely right.
I heard an interview about Apollo 13. Because he's just such an upbeat guy, like he is Richie Cunningham, and seems like in real life. And they were telling the story, like, we're in this module and we're all strapped in. And he goes, all of a sudden, Ron would poke his head in and he would tell us how to do the next shot. And then he'd poke his head out. You're like, this guy's so weird.
Yeah.
Like, Richie Cunningham's telling me how to film this. And then he's like, his head pops in and he's like, try to do it this way. And he would pop out again.
He's very down to earth.
Can I give you some of the worst movies I saw this summer?
What a great angle. Go for it.
I saw Moonfall. Did you see Moonfall at all?
I haven't even heard of that film.
This was a Roland Emmerich apocalyptic. The moon is crashing into the planet.
Wow.
I will leave it at that. Really, really bad. I love apocalyptic movies.
Okay.
This was atrocious. I will tell people, if you like apocalyptic movies, watch it once for the effects. Watch it once to see the world fall apart. But it is not. I will never watch it again. Really, really bad. So I was disappointed in that one. I saw The Lost City right at the beginning of the summer. Did you happen to see that one with Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum? I didn't love it. Did you like it?
Okay. I liked it a lot.
Okay. I didn't. It kind of it felt redundant isn't the word. I felt like I had heard all the gimmicks and jokes in past movies before.
It is derivative of previous films.
And I struggled with that aspect of it. And I like both of
it made a fair amount of money. I think it's still in the top 10 on the year.
Yeah, if you go to like any of the streaming services, it's one of the first recommendations every time you pull it up.
Who's in it? The Lost City? Channing Tatum?
And Sandra Bullock.
And Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt makes is it a cameo? Let's call it a
He's
cameo.
got several scenes. It's a little
Yeah.
more than a cameo.
I would not watch it again. The other one that I have down here, I just recently watched Day Shift, which is the Netflix one with Jamie Foxx. They're fighting
The Vampire
vampires.
Hunters, yeah.
Didn't love it. Huge Jamie Foxx fan. It just struggled to kind of find its footing personally for me. Didn't love it.
You
So
didn't buy.
three.
You didn't buy
Those are
Jamie
three I
Foxx as a
disliked.
vampire killer.
I did. It wasn't that I didn't buy him. I just didn't love the plot, or I just was like, "Why are we doing this?"
Well, it
I
beats
never
Abraham
felt-
Lincoln or Jesus Christ.
does,
They've made movies,
yes.
but they've
I
made movies along
tried.
those lines
I
too.
tried the Abraham Lincoln one, and I want to say 25 minutes. I couldn't do any more.
Did you have any summer movies that you did not enjoy?
It's
or what was towards
once
the
you
bottom of your
said that,
list?
Jeff, I was trying to think of them, and boy, I know there was one I watched recently that was really, really bad, and off the top of my head, I'm not remembering it. I must have just blanked it out.
Yeah.
You tried to
For
block
me,
that part out.
I
I'm
wish I
sh-
could do that with Moonfall. It was not good.
I'm sorry because Emmerich did Independence Day, right? So
Oh,
he's
yeah.
got a good track
Yeah.
record.
Oh yeah, 2012. He's done a lot of like apocalypse movies of work. It was bad. My favorite movie, and I had told Mark, maybe my favorite movie I've seen in like 2 or 3 years. I adored Elvis. I thought it was.
You liked it too,
I
right?
loved it.
I thought it was incredibly. We did almost a whole 40 minutes because I was that excited to talk about it. I'm assuming you got a chance to see it.
I have not seen it
You
yet.
have not
no.
seen it yet. Okay, you'll have to check it out because I literally, I would go see it again tomorrow.
I thought it was so much fun, and
Yes.
I think, I don't know. Again, we talked about it, so we don't need to rehash it. If you kind of go in and think like this is the Elvis story that they should make, and this is what I'm expecting, you're going to be disappointed because I think they took it from a unique angle.
Yes.
They showed, I don't want to just say just typical qualities, but the part of the historical struggle that I liked that I didn't really appreciate because it was the 50s and the times and about censorship and about still the cultural divide and because they were still going through the Martin Luther King, the rights marches and stuff that Elvis wasn't really a part of, but he was a part of. And so there were a lot of those aspects too that I thought were very well done.
Go ahead, sorry.
And I was just gonna say that the kid was a nobody, at least to me. If he was famous before this, I had no idea who he was.
Butler had been around, but like this was certainly nothing that would make you, for someone like you would not know who he was.
And
Yes.
Tom Hanks, you didn't know he was Tom Hanks unless you knew he was Tom Hanks.
No, you didn't. The two things that and I'll try to keep this very brief because we had talked about it. I'm curious of your opinion when you see this. I think Elvis is a very cartoonish figure. Because maybe it's because I'm so far removed from that time that when I see the outfits and I see the dance and just cartoony, telling the story from a different perspective and from a perspective where it's almost more cartoonish than Elvis allows you to see Elvis as a real person. At least it did for me. So that was huge. And then I told him the cinematography and the cutting of the scenes, you feel how Elvis feels depending on how quickly they are splitting and cutting from thing to thing. And so you have these moments where you can tell Elvis is at peace and it's these long shots and you're barely cutting and you're barely moving. And then the moments where his heart is racing or his mind is racing, we're here and now we're looking at this person. Now we're on the stage and now we're back in the crowd. And it's so you almost, as you're watching it, you are going through the mental, just incredibly well done. Really, really well done. What else do you have on your
And I have
list,
a buddy
Ross?
who loves Elvis who didn't like it.
Yeah,
I just
I
talked
know,
to him
it's
this
crazy.
weekend. I was like,
It is I found that people either loved it or didn't really get it.
and
It's
the people
interesting,
who
though.
didn't love it were wrong.
I love talking with you, Mark, because you're so flexible in your opinions. But it's interesting that, I mean, in the last 5 or 6 years, there's been this huge trend of taking rock superstars and making movies about them. They did the Beatles with that movie called Yesterday. We had Blinded by the Light, which did Springsteen. We had Rocket Man.
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Bohemian Rhapsody is the other one I was trying to think of. And then now we got Elvis. And I got to be thinking, Billy Joel's got to be sitting there thinking, when do I get my movie, right? Because we've done all the rest of it. And they're also planning a Bee Gees biopic. This should be out in the next year or two. But maybe it might be time to do one about Billy Joel because he had a pretty interesting life. Yeah, he did.
Not to go tangent, but I just got clickbaited into roles, biopic roles that were either great or awful, and it was very typical. I agreed with almost all. They did not like Rami Malek as
Freddie Mercury.
as Freddie Mercury, whoever wrote this. And I was shocked by that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was great.
Well, he did win the Academy Award for that role.
Did he win Best Actor?
Yes, he did.
I
Yeah.
thought it was great.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the one that I, like all the typical ones, I thought they kind of beat up people.
Rami's a little bit of an acquired taste, though, because I do have some friends that are kind of out on him. They feel like he's playing the same person every time.
Who else could have played Freddie Mercury?
I know, I agree.
I can't think of anybody.
I sincerely agree. I saw Nope.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that because
Yeah,
you saw it. I don't think you and I haven't.
seen
No,
it.
you and I.
I've
So
not seen it yet.
tell us whether you liked it and why.
So I enjoyed it. This is so simple. I enjoyed the setting more than anything else. I thought the landscape, I thought the pullouts, I thought the way that they were able to do the cloud scenes. I personally felt myself kind of had to remind myself, like I didn't have to look up, I kept kind of, I thought the storyline was congested isn't the right word. I kind of kept waiting for like the other shoe to drop, and no pun intended, because there is a shoe. I don't know if you noticed or not, but there's a standing shoe that everyone is debating in the one scene. But I kept kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, kind of like a more purposeful thing to happen. And it definitely has a resolution. I was satisfied with the resolution, but I never felt like we got kind of like the hammer. Like it never became more. I wanted it to be more, and it never became that.
Okay. Was it scary?
For me, it was. But
he's a big.
I'm a little bit of a I don't like the horror genre.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, yes, my palms were sweaty. I felt I kind of found myself like this kind of, but I sincerely enjoyed it. It's not Get Out, which I think will always be Jordan Peele's biggest challenge, is it's not M. Night Shyamalan level yet, but it is kind of he's always going to be looking in his rearview mirror of how do I make something as good or better than Get Out.
Yeah.
Do
you watch horror movies like this?
A little bit.
Is that? I mean, not you can't.
Sometimes.
A little bit. You have to
Sometimes I do. Depending on if it's good enough. Yeah.
My problem is my wife's not fond of them.
Okay.
So I often wind up having to see them alone, and seeing a horror movie by yourself is not really a great idea.
No.
Especially if it's a scary one.
No.
So,
See, I'll tell you what, I don't know if I talked about this before. I got this brilliant idea. Because when we watch MMA fights, I get the big screen out, I carry it out from the basement, put it on the back deck, and my son and his friends, they watch outside in the summer. That's what we do in the summer. So I had this idea that I could, if I was just going to watch a movie on a nice summer night, why would I watch it in my basement? I'll just carry the TV out to the back deck, and it'll be like my own drive-in movie. And what was the original zombie movie?
Night of the Living Dead.
And Night of the Living Dead. And they remade it in 99 or whatever. And I watched that on the back in the dark with this zombie movie, and I thought it would kind of add to the ambiance of it. And after I got done, I don't understand why anyone ever liked this movie, because I thought it was stupid.
You kept saying that about Nope. You kept saying people should see Nope in a drive-in theater because you're under the sky.
I watched what was the other the scary one? Not
you watched
Get Out, and then he did the other one.
Us.
I watched Us on the back deck too, thinking it would add to it, and I think it did, because Us was a little scary, kind of.
Creepy.
It added to the tension of it. But I did say that about Nope at the drive-in movie theater, but I haven't seen it yet, so I'll have to get back.
What was your Nope review?
He didn't see it.
You didn't get to see it yet. Gotcha. Okay.
I would like to.
I thought you had seen it. This is just kind of the last thing I'll say about it. I thought the acting was incredibly well done. I think there's a 30-40 minute move where you are gripped, you are along for this ride, and you really don't get a true sense of letting up. But there's a cut scene in the middle of it that almost slows the momentum. It's gory. It's completely removed from the actual story that you're being told. And for me, it was a momentum killer. I know I've talked to other people and they thought it was cinematic genius. I felt like he tried to do too much by having this completely separate side story being told along the way. But so it just depends.
Well, I guess I will see it eventually, because I do like Peele. Pretty interesting.
Did you see the Brad Pitt train movie? Is it out yet?
Oh yeah, it's in the top 10 on the year,
What's
even
it
though
called?
Bullet Train.
Bullet Train.
You can find a North Central Cinema review with him and Jeremy Stout on NorthcentralPa.com.
You want to hear a funny story?
Yeah.
So
Well, hold on. Did you see it yet?
I watched their review of it.
But you haven't seen the movie.
I have not seen the movie yet.
Okay. Well,
So,
give me your review then.
Jeremy and I are in there talking about this, and he said they didn't use enough practical effects. Now, what is Jeremy about? He can't be more than 26 or 27, right? Okay. So he says if you want to see a movie with good practical effects about a train, and I'm thinking to myself, he's not going to say the train. Remember that movie? That was the first time first time I was on your show. I said this was one of my 3 favorite movies.
Okay.
And he hauls out the train, which was made in 1964. You know, it was made 30 years before Jeremy was born, probably.
And then he hopped up, ran over, gave him a big kiss, and they have been in a love affair ever since.
Yes.
So yeah, we did fist bump. I said, dude, that's one of my favorite movies. But Bullet Train is pretty good. It was too violent for me. I'm not a big violence guy, and I took a friend of mine who also was not a violence guy, and it's supposed to be a comedy. So even though it was rated R, I didn't really expect it to be like a Tarantino film. And it was really like, you're like, wow, that's really disgusting. And it didn't strike me as particularly funny to be so disgusting. Other than that, it's not bad. The plot is really good. You talked about storytelling. That has almost too much plot. There's probably a dozen characters, and you don't figure out why they're all there till the very end when it all comes together. It's exciting. It is pretty funny. Some of the jokes, it's good, not great.
So it's a little bit of a Murder on the Orient Express, but
it's James Bond on the Orient Express.
Okay.
Except Brad Pitt plays this operative he's trying to tone things down. He's just been through therapy. He doesn't want to go around killing people anymore, so he doesn't even bring a gun with him. So it has the most random assortment of weaponry you'll ever see in an action movie. Chopsticks, toilet paper, stuffed animals, fire extinguishers, sushi trays.
Not a pencil, though. That's John Wick.
Nope, no pencils.
Only John Wick can kill 3 people with a pencil.
Yeah. So it's good, not great. And I think that's generally the critical consensus. Good, not great.
I'm assuming you saw the trailers beforehand.
Yep.
I felt like the trailer, I think people over exaggerate when they're like the trailer showed the whole movie. That one, I really felt like the trailer showed the whole movie.
But they didn't.
Am I wrong?
No,
Okay.
There's so much plotting in that film.
Okay.
There's even a number of performers that don't show up in the trailer.
Okay.
Channing Tatum has a cameo, and Ryan Reynolds has a really short cameo.
You're there.
Let's go right now.
You are there.
Yeah, we're talking about 20 seconds here, Jeff. So don't get too excited.
Might not be worth it. What else do you have on your list?
Well, I don't have too much else from the summer. I will say that the summer's not quite over yet.
Okay.
I'm a little interested.
Tell that to the school kids.
Yeah.
You were a teacher.
That hurts,
you
man.
Were part of
I still can't get used to school starting so early. Maybe a couple days before Labor Day, but not August, like 18th or 19th is kind of nuts.
So let me twist that. Because your other life, you were an English teacher.
Yeah.
Right? Did you enjoy going back to school? Or were at the end, were you like, okay, I'm kind of bored of this. This is what I do. I want to go back and teach. Or were you one of these teachers that was like, no, I could do 12 months of summer?
The build up, getting my classroom ready and all the in-services and realizing that now I have to get up at 7 o'clock every morning again. That was tough. Once I was in the room with the kids, I was good. Now I remember why I'm doing this. But the psychological buildup was rather difficult. But I always loved my job, and I always loved working with kids.
What did you teach other than English?
High school English.
What was your, were you American literature? Were you British literature?
I got bounced around all over the place. I had grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. I did some general. I did American. I did British. I did world lit. Teachers tend to get bounced around a lot, which is a good thing. So you're not teaching the same thing for 30 years.
What did you like the most?
Shakespeare.
I was going to say Shakespeare.
Because the kids come in and they're like, we can't read this. It's a foreign language. What's the big deal with Shakespeare? And by the time we got through with, you were talking about a little earlier about storytelling. Shakespeare is a storyteller.
He's pretty good.
I mean, man, by the end of the first act, he's usually got several balls in the air, and we'd finished the play, and the kids were like, "Wow, that was really good," and they could understand why Shakespeare is.
I used to tell people, once someone explains to you what's going on, it's brilliant. You just need someone to help you. Because as a high school kid, I think it's right. It is a foreign language, and they can read it, but they just need someone to help them read it.
They need to see it.
So
you need to have several good versions on DVD or even VHS.
What's your favorite Shakespeare, if you had to pick one?
My favorite Shakespeare play is Hamlet. Every Shakespeare play fan will tell you that, I think.
Okay.
And the nice thing about Hamlet is there's probably 8 or 10 really good film versions that you can be showing kids. You just pick and choose whichever scene from which version. There's one with, you guys know who David Tennant is? He did that in about 10 years ago. He did a version, really great. So,
You know what works for him? I don't want to compliment him while he's sitting here. There would be a lot of stuffy, like Shakespeare fans who would say like everything on the screen is no good.
No. You think so?
Yes,
but the thing is, Mark, Shakespeare. Now we're following a rabbit trail here, so we'll try not to spend too much time on this. But what I constantly remind my students is, when Shakespeare's audience that went to see his plays, probably 90% of them could not read.
correct.
This was an illiterate culture.
Correct.
So we're not talking about scholarship here. We're not talking about having a PhD to watch a Shakespeare play. These were spectacles made for people who had a hard life, and most of them couldn't read, and none of them had an education because there weren't even libraries back then. So he had to be able to get it across to the people. So I don't understand how a Shakespeare scholar could look at a movie and say, this is no good. Shakespeare would have loved it. He would have been like, yeah, look at all that blood over there. I couldn't do that when I was writing because he didn't have the special effects. He would have loved it, I think. I think so.
What have you seen Anonymous? The movie about the guy who might have been Shakespeare because
I heard about that. No, I didn't see that one, Mark.
I'll give it to you. It's
Okay.
great.
Okay.
I've watched it multiple times. I think it's great. You've never seen Anonymous.
I have not.
Yeah, because
It's over his head.
they're
He couldn't
still-
keep up.
It is. That's true.
But you asked me what I was about to say that I'm kind of looking forward to Beast,
Yeah.
which is kind of a lowbrow action movie with Idris Elba, but he's always great. I would have loved to have seen Elba play James Bond at least once,
Yes.
but now he's getting a little too old for the role. And then George Miller, who directed what may be the greatest action movie ever made, Fury Road, has a new film coming out. And I'm embarrassed that I cannot remember the exact title of it. It's 3,000 Years of Something. And Elba is in that too, along with Tilda Swinton. It's not an action movie. But Miller really knows what he's doing. He's a very, very smart guy.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. And then later, if I could talk about some movies
Keep
later
going.
in the year,
Go for it.
we got, how about this, man? I know it's kind of verboten to get your phone out here because you guys have
No,
like
no,
one of your
you're
longest shows ever on when you can and cannot
Oh,
check
no,
your
we're good.
phone.
Oh,
But
we're
this
good.
guy, David Russell, who made Silver Linings Playbook and American Hustle, he's got a movie coming out called Amsterdam,
Yes.
which is an October film. Listen to this. Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, John David Washington, Chris Rock, Anna Taylor-Joy, Zoe Saldana, Mike Myers, Michael Shannon, Timothy Olyphant, Taylor Swift, Rami Malek, and Robert De Niro.
It's gonna suck. There's nobody in it.
Loaded. In the trailer.
You had me
I
after the
haven't
first
even-
two. Who were the first two?
Christian Bale and Margot Robbie,
I
and
was
then
sold
John
then.
David Washington. Yeah.
There in the trailer, you actually kind of get a feel for Christian Bale's character, and I find his character hilarious already. And
Okay.
obviously, I haven't seen the movie.
Well,
so-
Russell's a smart guy.
Yeah.
And
he's
then in
not
October, they've also made a movie about Emmett Till.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't that look like it's going to be
Yes,
great? Wow.
intense.
And then I was telling the guys right before the show here that one of our local boys made good, Adam Makis, who's a Montoursville High School graduate. He's written several books about World War II and the Korean War. And his latest book called Spearhead actually debuted at number 4 on the New York Times bestseller list when it came out. But most of his books have been optioned for films, and the first of those comes out in November. It's called Devotion. It's about the first Black naval fighter pilot who was shot down in Korea during the Korean conflict. That's got a good cast, and that looks like a good one. And then later on, we got Avatar, the first of a couple of Knives Out sequels,
Mhm.
right?
Knives Out was fun.
Yeah.
Knives Out was really
Remember,
fun.
I didn't get it. Like I got it, but I wasn't as.
It didn't work for you.
You know what though? I think people ruined it for me because they were like, "It's amazing, it's amazing, it's amazing." And I was like, "Oh, this is going to be amazing." So I don't know. I might have waited too long to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Knives Out was fun.
I know you did. You really liked it.
Yep. So there's lots to look forward to yet
Yeah.
for the rest of the year.
But I tell you, and this may be, I thought one of the things about Knives Out that I really liked was all my kids liked it. And when you have 3 teenagers, and you have 2 girls and a boy, and trying to find a movie that everyone, I think they all liked Maverick, although we all didn't see it together.
Why do you suppose Knives Out had that
I
cross-generational
don't
appeal, Mark?
know. I think it just the whole like who done it and trying to figure it out, and it was just gripping from the standpoint of it was Clue, really a glorified more.
Were you gripped? Like, did you feel like?
Oh, I was trying to figure it out the whole time. Like, who did it? How did this happen? I can't put it together.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, the weird thing about that movie is it's kind of a whodunit, but they sort of tell you what happened at about the 40-minute point.
Right.
And then you still can't figure out how it happened. So it's very smart in that way. I'm going to plug one other thing in here too.
You say whatever you want.
You
are the man.
The young lady who was in Knives Out, who played the maid,
okay,
Anya de Armas. She's made a lot of other films too. She's got a film coming out in September in which she plays Marilyn Monroe.
You're thinking, saw the preview.
Wait a minute, she doesn't look a thing like Marilyn Monroe. But if you see her in the blonde wig, you're like, wow, that's a little scary. The only thing is, and I'm a Monroe fan and I'm an Anya de Armas fan, but they rated that NC-17, which makes me a little nervous because I'm not,
I'm intrigued now. Let's go.
Okay, Marcus sold.
Let's do it.
Marilyn Monroe, NC-17. And by the way, it's going to be on Netflix. It's not a theatrical film.
So let me ask you this then, since we go to, because one of the arguably the great the great show of our generation is Hamilton, where they had George Washington as a black guy. Like nobody looked anything like, and it didn't matter whether it made it better. I don't know, but it's the greatest, theater show of our generation. So does Hamilton make an argument that it doesn't really matter if she even looks like Marilyn Monroe, or does the person need to look like Marilyn Monroe because it didn't look like George Washington and it didn't look like Thomas Jefferson?
Well, I think for someone like Marilyn, looks are more important than they are for the founding fathers. No one cares what Thomas Jefferson really looked like, but Marilyn Monroe's fame was founded partly on the fact that she's one of the sexiest women who's ever on the screen. So you've got to have someone who at least can pull it off, who can have that. The thing about Marilyn is she was very sexy, but she also had this naivete about her, as though there was something of the schoolgirl still in her persona.
It's a really good point because I'm gonna blank on the name of the guy who played George Washington in Hamilton, but he is so large, like he was so much bigger than everybody else on the stage.
Physically, he was
and that was the point,
like
that. So I totally agree.
The persona has to be there.
Yes. Not so much that George Washington looked the same, but you knew he was in charge every time, I guess.
No, I get it. It's just, it's a fascinating dynamic of the fact that they, like, nobody did. And it didn't care, and it all worked. And so it's interesting as we go forward now. Will it be as vital for people? But Marilyn Monroe's a pinup. And there are so many people who know what she looks like and don't know what her voice sounded like.
Right.
Because depending on your age. So she was supposedly very, very bright, wasn't she? She had an incredibly tormented, troubled youth, and but she comes off as like the pretty blonde bimbo, but apparently she was really intelligent.
Yeah. There's a moment, what I think was her last film was called The Misfits with Clark Gable and Monty Clift. And that was written by Arthur Miller. And she was married to him.
She was married to, yes.
And there's a speech in there where she says, I'm not as dumb. Her character says, I'm not as dumb as everybody thinks I am. I'm paraphrasing. But she says, I don't know why people always put that on me. And you could just hear Miller writing that in there for her and saying, look, you guys have all sold this woman short. And she was 36.
I was going to ask
if only she had lived a little bit longer. They might have started casting her in different roles, and we would have seen a different side of her.
Wasn't Judy Garland like 42?
I don't remember, but she was awfully young.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is.
A lot of superstars who we lost at a very young age.
Now, like, unfortunately, their demise was so much different than Chadwick Boseman's, who was 30. Is he 40? Was he 40?
I don't remember. He was around 40.
But he was so young, but anyway, go ahead.
No, you're good. Just to wrap up, I had The Adam Project, which I don't know if you saw that or not.
I'm not familiar with that, Jeff.
That was a Netflix one. It had Ruffalo, it had Ryan Reynolds. Really, really well done. It kind of filled the superhero void for me because there's some superhero aspects to it. Time traveling involved. It was really, really well done.
Was it received well?
It was, but I think it got, because it was on Netflix. Netflix is going through this weird point in time where some of their like really what would be considered like a blockbuster for them, people are kind of like, it's Netflix. Like, I don't know, because they just put out The Gray Man with Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans. Same thing, really well done, but like people aren't watching it. So I don't know what the backlash is with some of these like blockbuster things with Netflix, but I thought The Adam Project filled that, blockbuster superhero that Marvel failed to for me this summer. Seabeast. Anybody see Seabeast?
I saw Seabiscuit.
You saw Seabiscuit. Seabeast is a animated movie on Netflix. They crushed it with this one. If it was on Disney Plus, that's all anybody would be talking about. Really, really, really good. And then if you're looking for a decent laugh, nothing that's going to knock your socks off, The Man from Toronto. I love Woody Harrelson. Kevin Hart's in it as well. Kind of keeps you guessing. You don't know what's really going to happen next. Really, really, really.
Where's that?
Netflix as well.
Really? The Man from Toronto. Woody Harrelson and Kevin Hart?
This is one of the sneakiest parts about the summer, and part of it might be because people went back to the movie theater. Netflix crushed it this summer. Crushed it. With the ratings they're receiving and the reviews they're getting for a lot of their movies, the problem Netflix has right now is nobody's seeing these things, which is the exact opposite problem they had probably 3, 4, 5 years ago. They had so many people watching stuff they couldn't keep up with demand. Now it's flipped on them. Now all of a sudden they have all these movies coming out and they are Netflix properties.
So the Seabeast, how do you spell that, Jeff?
What's that?
Seabeast.
Seabeast. SEABEA.
Like the military branch. Okay.
Yep.
But it's not about the It's not about the military.
No. So this is about your back hundreds of years, and it is about dragons in the ocean, sea creatures, Loch Ness type stuff. And
you got my interest.
There's captains.
I like that kind of stuff.
It's a full animated. I mean, it is your Disney Pixar style movie, but it is very, very well done. Kids, my niece can't get enough of it, to the point where I was like, I apparently need to see what's going on here. Turned it on. I thought it was fantastic. If it was on Disney Plus, it would have crushed.
You know what's better than that?
What?
An NC-17 movie about Marilyn
Monroe.
Yes. I'm convinced.
But see, this is what's funny is you don't really like. What's a movie where nudity? I'm trying to think how I want to word this. What is a movie that you have seen where nudity decided whether or not you liked them?
Showgirls. No, I'm kidding.
Let's try not to end the show on that note, shall we?
I don't know. I don't know.
Because
that would be a good question.
What else are they going to? If it's going to be NC-17, unless I'm completely
there's
missing
so much
something.
gore.
Yes, unless I'm missing something in the history of Marilyn Monroe.
I have read
why
somewhere
else would it be
that there is some violence in the film.
Okay.
Yeah, I read somewhere just a passing reference to it.
So it might not just all be the idea of like nudity.
I'm trying. It's a very interesting question. I'm trying to think of a movie. I think there are movies where, like, I don't want to say the absence of nudity made it unrealistic. Like one of the ones that did you ever see the movie Couples Retreat?
Yeah.
I think it was PG-13. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this is not, no 13-year-old is going to watch this movie because it's about couples struggling in relationships trying to find. Mm-hmm. This was an adult movie. And if they would have made it more with adult humor and adult life, I think it would have worked better. Uh-huh. But I don't know if there's ever been a movie. I think there are movies like Showgirls and Striptease and ones where they thought if we just throw nudity into it, it'll make the movie, and it clearly doesn't. Yeah, I don't know.
I have always, maybe I'm thinking about this wrong. I've always viewed nudity as a cop out or like a safety valve for like, we're not sure if this is going to work, but hey, you might see so and so without their shirt.
You know, this may be a topic we can cover in a future show.
That is an interesting topic because I'm thinking my favorite movies ever, like Good Will Hunting, Jaws. I'm seeing The Natural. My favorite. If I listed like my top favorite movies ever, I love A Few Good Men. There's no nudity in any of it.
Right.
I love the dialogue and the characters and the suspense is what really makes movies for me.
And it's becoming more of an issue now that some of these actresses are being interviewed, and it's becoming clear that they were coerced into doing nude scenes that they didn't really want to do. I've been reading a lot about this online.
That is a very interesting topic. What's the best movie with real nude scenes? I'll tell you one that seemed to.
How did we wind up in this position? It's my fault. I'm the one that raised. I raised the Marilyn Monroe film.
One of the ones where I would say it was vital was Monsters Ball. Yeah, with Halle Berry, but I didn't even really like Monsters Ball. I think it was okay. I know it won all these awards and it was artistic and all that. I thought the movie was okay.
The true irony to this conversation for you is you have all but abandoned television and TV series.
Yes.
And the irony to that is there might be no place, I don't want to use the word better, but there might be no better place right now for nudity than TV series and like your HBO series, there's certain Netflix series. Like there's these great series like that have great dialogue, great plot, all these things. And nudity is a huge part of these series.
I watched Stranger Things.
You've completely abandoned. Well, yes, I would obviously.
Stranger Things didn't have. I watched Queen's Gambit. There was no nudity. Like
Queen's Gambit.
I don't think so.
No, there wasn't.
There wasn't any.
No,
and I have to pitch in and say that I can almost count on one hand the number of movies I've seen where I thought the sex scene or the nude scene was necessary for the film. Maybe 5 or 10 at the very most.
It's a fascinating question.
Usually it's a cop out.
It is a fascinating question.
Do you remember 300?
I haven't seen 300.
Okay, so in the movie 300, which was very well received and I enjoyed, did you
made a ton of money?
I never saw. I've had it in my hand before.
Yes,
and couldn't bring myself.
So I have always thought of 300 whenever this comes up because there's a sex scene in it when they're about to go away for war, and obviously the king and the queen have make love. However, in the scene there is no nudity, and that's always stuck with me because it was very important to show that they made love because he might not return. Right. However, they understood this movie is good enough to stand on its own that we do not have to put nudity.
Right.
And that's always stayed with me.
There's fascinating that from the art aspect and from the storytelling aspect. You've never seen Black Swan, have you?
I have.
You've seen Black Swan?
I didn't see Black Swan. Okay. I had a feeling I wouldn't like it.
I've told people that it is the scene between Mila Kunis and Natalie Portman. Yeah. I was like, is the sexiest scene I've ever seen where everyone was fully dressed. But now that my mind is just wandering. The Thomas
it's
Crown
not wandering,
affair.
It's locked in is what it is.
This is the most locked in he's ever. His pupils
you've seen Thomas Crown with Rene Russo, and Rene Russo's topless in the Thomas Crown because I saw an explanation where they said to her, if you're on your own private island with this guy and you're laying on the beach, you're not going to be fully clothed. And she goes, yeah, you're right. And they said, because no one would believe that she's on her own private island laying in the sun and she's not topless, at least. So there's an aspect of that where from an artistry believability standpoint, I was like, okay, I can buy that.
It's like Entourage on HBO.
I've never watched Entourage.
So on Entourage, he's a movie star. He's up and coming, and he has a clique. And obviously, they all live together. And so the whole argument is like, there's no way every girl that would have walked in and out of that house would have been clothed. And it's based off of Mark Wahlberg's young startup, like his young career startup. And I kind of agree with that sentiment.
I would tell you, I agree with.
I guess I didn't disagree with the argument for it. I would imagine most girls walking out of Mark Wahlberg's house probably didn't always have their clothes on when they came
I'll
down.
tell you a movie that the nudity was necessary. I would never have believed it was Straight Outta Compton for the same aspect.
Oh, really?
Did you saw Straight Outta Compton?
Yes, I did. No, I see what you're saying. Just because of like the party aspect and the
yes.
celebrity aspect to it.
Yes.
No, that's a fair point.
Well, maybe when Maryland comes out, which is it's called Blonde. That's the name of the movie, Blonde. It'll be out in about a month. Maybe we can rehash this decision.
And you said that one's a Netflix.
It's
well.
Netflix.
Dude,
Yes,
Netflix.
it's also very long. I think it's close to 3 hours.
And you say it's the girl that was from Knives Out is playing Marilyn.
Which
Marilyn Monroe is one of the fascinating creatures of American history.
Yeah, we can have a long discussion
She
about
is,
that.
Just the mystique about her and the mystery about her death and all this. She is one of the great characters.
And the crazy thing is, she didn't make that many great movies. Maybe 3. I mean, she made some good movies, but very few that you would consider masterpieces.
Yeah.
So we could have a long discussion about all this.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate you coming in.
Okay.
Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. I'm Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. Joe Smith, North Central Cinema. Thank you guys. Have a great